Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Hawes from Washington Christian Academy, and we are going to be presenting a webinar this morning on building Christian friendships, and particularly for middle school students, and more specifically, some of the things that we do here at Washington Christian Academy. As I said, I'm Dave Hawes, the Director of Operations here, and I've got with me two of our teachers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a minute, but Stephanie DiMaria, who teaches Latin and grammar, and Jason Winter, who teaches history and government here at WCA. What are we going to cover today? I'm going to talk a little bit about Washington Christian Academy at the beginning, if there are those that aren't familiar with it. As I said, our teachers are going to take a little bit of time to introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into the topic. Making friendships, particularly in the middle school. It's a challenging time. We're going to talk some about that, why Christian schools, we believe, have a strategic advantage in that challenge, and then some of the things specifically you can see on the agenda that we're doing here at Washington Christian Academy to be able to support the middle school students that we have and their friendships. So about Washington Christian Academy, we're a school that serves kids in grades kindergarten through 12. We are located in Olney, Maryland, founded, as you can see, in 1960, and we're a K through 8 school up until about 1996, and that's when we added high school. So we've been around and doing school business for a while. And the ways that we talk about our school, three of the words or phrases we use are reverent, adventurous, and academically serious. So I won't take a long time, but we're reverent. Certainly we're intentional Christian school. That's one of the ways I communicate it. Hopefully you'll see that worked itself out even in our webinar today. We are adventurous. We're going to talk some about that as we work with middle school students. And adventurous, often we think of in creating opportunities for students to do things, to take risks. That could be an academic risk, a social risk, but to not be afraid and to have an environment where students are able to do that. And finally, academically serious. We're a school, but even as a Christian school, the Lord tells us that whatever we do, we're to do heartily as unto Him. And for us, that's school. So we should be serious about that part of it and be as hard working toward creating a great academic environment and experience for the students here. So a little bit about Washington Christian Academy. We've got lots more information on our website, so I encourage you, if you want to learn more, to browse there. But to really learn about us, we'd love to have you visit either in an open house. We actually have one coming up next Tuesday. Or if that's not convenient, we certainly welcome families to arrange a tour and come by and see the school anytime. So with that, let's jump into our topic. I'm going to let our teachers just give you a brief update on them. I forgot to do that for myself a little bit. So before they do, I said I'm the Director of Operations. I've worked at WCA for 12 years now, and I'll also be throwing my parent hat on a little bit through the course of time here. I have 5 children. All 5 have been at WCA, and particularly relevant to the seminar today, my youngest is finishing his last couple months at Washington Christian Academy. So I will have graduated from the middle school years with all 5 of them. And Jason and Stephanie are smiling because they've had, they know the Haas children. So we'll try to keep some of that out of the webinar today. But anyway, go ahead, Stephanie.
Like I said, my name is Stephanie DiMaria. I teach Latin and grammar for the middle school. So I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is my 5th year at WCA. It's been thoroughly enjoying my time here.
All right, Jason.
All right. Again, I'm Jason Winter. I teach 6th and 7th grade world history and 8th grade American government. It's my 4th year at WCA. I love it here. I love being in a school where I can overtly disciple my students. other than that, I guess I'm an avid learner. In my spare time, you'd catch me reading stuff about foreign or national security policy or international relations, and or otherwise history books and stuff. So.
Great, great. Both Jason and Stephanie are middle school teachers and have been, I think. I mean, have there been any non-middle school classes you guys have taught in your years here? Yeah, so they are dedicated to Washington Christian Academy's middle school, and that's certainly one reason we have them here talking with us. I think I'm going to talk a little bit at the beginning before we have Jason and Stephanie jump in, or they'll jump in maybe as a part of this. One of the challenges we think is understanding middle school students. You know, I've been a parent, as I said. I have my 5 kids, and Jason and Stephanie have seen enough middle school students over the years that, you know, we understand there's, you know, a particular challenge that goes on, you know, during those middle school years. And also a caveat, none of us are licensed psychologists, but as I said, we've certainly seen middle school students to have what I think are pretty good perceptions about some of the challenges and the ways that we can help them. We use the phrase for middle school students here at WCA, becoming. You know, kids at that age are really at this crossroads where they are starting to become someone, and you know, become someone who is you know, their own identity. So you can see I have the bullet point identity. Who am I? You know, often before that, children will really associate themselves and their identity with their parents, which obviously rightly they should. You know, I'm the son of or daughter of this particular, you know, parent or parents, and so, you know, that's who, as they think of themselves as that, and at some point, and it's certainly not at exactly the same age for all kids, you know, they transition into realizing, you know, they're their own person, and they can at times have different ideas than their parents, or different beliefs, or different desires for themselves, and they're figuring that stuff out. So that's a change that happens. I've talked to, you know, seen it myself, and my kids talked to so many parents over the years that kind of are wondering what's going on as they see a transition and a change happen, and that's certainly a part of it. The other huge thing that happens at that time is, you know, the significance of the community, or, you know, their peer group. And whereas in many cases, you know, their parents are, you know, really kind of dictate as a part of who they are, what they want, and who they think of themselves as. And as they're getting older and becoming their own person, you know, their peer group has a whole lot more to do with it. You know, and the kinds of things they see their peers doing, but at least as much, what do they think about me? You know, what are they thinking about what I'm doing? And, you know, I've seen enough lower school kids, they're acting and doing things. They're not thinking as much about how are the people around me, how are my peers, you know, reacting? What are they going to think about me if I say this, or if I do this, or if I join this club or do this thing? But, you know, that really comes, you know, in force, you know, in the middle school, and so much really of who they are often gets wrapped up in who their peers think them to be, or what they think that, you know, perception is. And that's, I think if we had to describe the challenge associated with it, that's a big part of it. And we so often see this transition happening, particularly through the middle school years. Again, a caveat, this is not, you know, all of my kids have been different in the way that they've gone through this, and challenges kind of in different areas associated with it. And in some cases, there's not a big challenge. In some cases, they're pretty significant challenges. But you know, these are the kinds of things that we see that rooted in. We also believe that Christian schools have an incredible advantage in addressing, you know, these things. I haven't used the word friendships a lot yet. And if you're wondering why in the world did I sign up for this, you know, seminar, it's about friendships. You know, we think those two things, who students think they are, you know, that their identity and the kind of community they're in, are at the core of then the friendships that are gonna work out from that. So that's why we haven't started this discussion with friendships. But that's certainly where all of these things, you know, we see the effects of them. mean, we've seen, I've talked about the challenge. We've seen, so many times here at school, students that have been best friends, all through lower school. They've been together since kindergarten. And then, they get to middle school and they're not best friends anymore. And there are other issues that come up. But again, as we think, we've seen, that challenge and the challenge of friendships in middle school, centered around these two things. So a little bit about identity from a Christian perspective. We can say we know that, for all of us, not just middle school students, but maybe more strategically for them, that to know that your identity, is rooted in Christ is what's important. I have Luke 12:15 referenced on the slide. In that verse, Jesus says, even when you have an abundance, your life doesn't consist of your possessions. So, who am I and what does my life consist of? And often that's that, challenge that happens in those middle school years, back to that identity, where we can say and remind students that, ultimately their identity is who they are in Christ, that they're loved by him, created by God, designed perfectly, forgiven by him, that they are a son of him, that they are created, for wonderful purposes. And that, should be the bedrock of when they think about who they are, and then who they are as a friend, or what kinds of friends they have. That can be the bedrock of that. The other wonderful thing I mentioned, we know that God designs us all. He designs us differently. And so often it's those differences in middle school that can create friendship issues and problems, but we can embrace those as Christians, recognizing that God has intentionally designed those in, and as a part of a community together, even those middle school students are benefiting from the differences and should be benefiting from, instead of thinking they need to eliminate them. So that doesn't completely get rid of the concerns about peers, but certainly it's truth that we can share from a Christian perspective that, that we can pray will really take root in the hearts of our students. Just a couple words on the community as well, since that's such a big deal associated with, middle school students, their peers, what they think about, how they think about themselves is, with what, the Lord has told us about what we're supposed to be as a community. That's something we have to call students to collectively. How should we be acting? What kind of community should we be? And all you have to do is go through Scripture and look at all the places where it talks about the one another. How should we treat one another? That's the ammunition, so to speak, that we have to set before, our students to say, what kind of community as a Christian community does God, want us to be? And we think particularly those two things are critical, just, foundations in our being able to, support, our students, have them know who they are, and build their friendships. So now a little more specifically, we as a school, what are we doing when we think about middle school students and friendships? And I have to talk one more slide. I didn't certainly want Jason and Stephanie to have to maybe toot their own horns, but I would say the first thing we do as a school is we hire great teachers. And, they're in the building, they're with these students. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the opportunities that they have. But the first thing is they have an identity in Christ. And they're examples to those students of people who that's where they see their identity resting. And, they're people that are going to have a vision for that community and a biblical vision of it, and have the kind of, resources, biblical resources to remind students and to call them to living that kind of community. And, the other thing that's, so important is to have teachers that love middle school students. And a part of that is understanding the kinds of things we've been talking about, and, and recognizing that, they're going to change. I remember a discussion, this wasn't with Jason or Stephanie, of another middle school teacher at one point said one of the benefits about middle school students is that kind of changing dynamic. And one day can be terrible, and maybe the high school student, that's going to stay with them for a week. That the middle school student, the next day they could come in and life is great again. So they're not as bound up in that. So you have to have teachers that understand that and love that kind of a dynamic and working with them. All right, well, I've done too much talking. I'm going to let Jason and Stephanie do some now. Something else we do, we have structured and kind of unstructured times as we help students think about their friendships and their identity. So let's see, Jason, maybe you could start and jump in on this a little bit about the kinds of things that we do.
So every day starts out with homeroom, and it's about a 15-minute period, and different teachers use that period differently, but generally it involves some kind of a time of prayer. Some teachers do prayer requests, current events, a devotional. I change it up somewhat myself, but it's a time whenever we can just sort of get focused for the day and put our hearts and minds in the right place. And I think we'd all agree it's a pretty productive part of the day in that respect. And every day I don't think the public schools are doing this now, but we have daily recess, which seems at the middle school level, it's just very important that they get out and exert some energy and be able to engage each other in creative, self-directed play. And it really helps the afternoon to be a productive thing. Between class, we have an 8-period day with a 4-minute transition in between each class. That's a little bit of time where they can just catch up with a friend quickly. They're all on the second floor. They don't. They're all on the second floor. So they have an extra minute or two for to ask about something that happened last night or whatever they do. After school, us teachers stay around for at least a half hour or so, and it's a great time for anything from helping them troubleshoot a conflict they're having to making up work or just otherwise providing some sort of impromptu counseling or discipleship.
Great. Stephanie?
I would just add on to that I think homeroom in general is really, for me, a big point where I am able to engage with the students spiritually and personally, just getting a gauge for where the class as a whole is at and maybe where there are issues arising between them or that they're dealing with outside of class. And it's enough time in the morning that I usually am able to have a conversation with them about how they're handling things, maybe things that are stressing them a little bit, and we can discuss a little bit how to manage that in a way that is godly and encouraging to everyone else. And I also agree that just some of that unstructured time of between classes or during lunch periods, during that free period, I often find that that's when I have really great conversations with students about what's going on in their lives. I'm able to, spot potential issues. If I, see down the hall somebody's having a little bit of a spat, I find that it's a good moment to be able to step in and help them to resolve that in a way that's constructive to both parties. So overall, I think both are important elements that we do fairly well.
All right, great. Let's talk about kind of our class size here. And even from the things that Jason and Stephanie said to this point, connecting with the students and knowing what's going on is a big part of that. So this has to do with class size, and there are other things associated with that. So Stephanie, why don't you jump in on this one?
Yeah, well, one of the things I've always loved has been the small class size. I've taught at schools where you have about 30 kids, and when you get to that mass in a classroom, it's just really easy for some of the students kind of slip through the cracks a little bit. It's harder to get to know each one of them on a deeper level. But the class sizes here at WCA have really been wonderful in terms of getting to know each child, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, how they interact with one another. And being able to see that change through the years too, because I have them in classes with different configurations. So I see them, oh, well, this is how you were with this person, but now you're sitting next to this guy. How does that change things? How do I respond to that? And then it also, because their classes are smaller, they're forced to engage with each other much more intentionally, because you can't hide in the crowd, as it were. You may have your friends that are a little bit closer, but you still have to interact with your whole class community because it's not broken up as much. So I think it gives them a lot more opportunity where they have to interact and engage with people that maybe they wouldn't choose to normally. And that definitely creates its own issues, but it also in that creates a lot of opportunity for them to find different ways of resolving conflict or getting to know someone that they would not naturally do in maybe a larger school.
Great. Jason,
Small
anything
town,
to add
not
there?
city.
Right, small town, right. So you're gonna, they're gonna know each other, and I think as we think about, the teachers watching what's going on with the students, like you said, in homeroom or in their classes, it's being aware of those friendship dynamics that are happening, and so there's not going to be a student that that is going to be alone at a table or not in a particular group together in a classroom that the teachers aren't going to see and notice and be able to work with the other students in those classes as well. Great. We also think that just the size of the school in general is something that is important, that helps help students in getting through these challenges in middle school and building friendships. We have typically from 20 to 35 students in each grade, broken into 2 separate classes, but that's generally, as you think about the size of the whole middle schools, something like 80 students or so. So that's what, as I talk about the size of WCA, that's what I'm talking about. Jason, any thoughts you have in this particular area?
Well, because the school is not too large, we see the students. I teach every middle school student every day for 3 consecutive years. So every student in the middle school passes through my room for 3 years, and so I get to see them and learn their patterns and observe their development over a long period of time, and it helps you that really facilitates you picking up on trends and growth or areas of concern, and if I only saw them, say, in their 7th grade year, because there were so many 7th graders that I was just a 7th grade teacher, then I would have less opportunity to do that. So it's very helpful in that respect.
Right. Stephanie, yeah.
I think
anything you would throw in?
Yeah, overall as well, the fact that the entire middle school is a little bit smaller means that not only do they interact with people on their grade level, but the students also are much more likely to engage with students either older or younger than them. And so you get a lot more of that interaction across grade levels that I think really is very beneficial, both in the sense of being able to interact with someone maybe a little bit more mature than you, someone who's has had experiences you haven't had yet, can give you a little advice. But also it's really great as a development in leadership for older students as well, that they can find students that maybe they can bring alongside them and befriend and build that relationship. And then additionally, like Jason was saying, I've really enjoyed being able to teach all 3 levels of middle school. I think by the time they get to 8th grade, I've got a really strong relationship with the students, and to the point where I've seen a lot of kids when they get to high school come back and still talk with me and visit with me, and that's a added bonus in my mind, that I get to see how they develop even into high school and still get to have that relationship with them.
Right. Great. I can't I'll put the parent hat on at this point. As I said, I've had 3 of the 5 children spend all 3 years, through the WCA middle school. I think of my daughter, who's in 10th grade now, how she, toward the end of her 8th grade year, was lamenting the fact that she was, leaving middle school. And I don't know how often, that happens, but it was certainly because of that, what Stephanie just mentioned, the relationships that she had built with, with the teachers there. I also think that both Jason and Stephanie mentioned this, but I wanted to highlight the fact that, they're with students over several years. And I think that creates this, this really long-term view of the students that we have here. It's not a teacher that is just going to have a student for one class 1 year and kind of their goal is to get through it, but they know they're going to have that student next year and the year after that. And so, there's a real commitment to, building, the character of the students. And again, maybe we're not using the word friendship as much as you might have expected in this, but these are the kinds of core things that are going to work themselves out into the kinds of friendships that students are going to have and be able to end up keeping for throughout then high school and and on into the future. If they know who they are, if they're rooted in that, if they have a community around them that feels safe, if they have people that care for them, then they're going to feel good about themselves, who they are, Christ, and that's going to open lots and lots of doors of opportunity for them. So I think that's been a huge difference, and we've seen that just in so many students here over the years that go through, that have some challenges through those middle school years, and then you look at them up in 9th and 10th and 11th grade, and you see the fruit of all that work over those course of the years with teachers that know them and teachers that are committed to them. One more particular area that we think there are things that we do that's trying to create an adventurous environment. I mentioned that just at the beginning, so I'm going to let Stephanie talk about that a little bit.
Well, when we talk about adventure, I think it's a fairly big term that we can use in many different ways. And one way in particular that I think you see this evidenced at WCA is that students really have a mindset that this is a place where they are able to try new things and that it's an environment that encourages them to do that. So you look at your soccer team and you have the kids that are naturally gifted at soccer, but you also have the kids who maybe love the sport or are discovering that they love the sport on the team as well. And they're building new skills that maybe they wouldn't have done in a different setting because you have your soccer kids or you have the athletic group, but that encompasses a lot more of our student body here. And then within the classroom, just the different electives we offer. I think we all, again, the way our 6th grade is structured, we have the students try out art and music and just all the different things that we offer so that they're exposed to a broad range of experiences there. And I would say, to WCA's credit, within each classroom, I think teachers have been given a really marvelous freedom of opportunity in how we teach. That we have our curriculum set, but there is also room within there to really embrace what we're passionate about or to guide the students into something that seems to be interesting them so that we can engage different things that come up. I know I teach Latin, so obviously I have a love of language, but I really enjoy getting to find ways that are unique to each class that will get them excited about that, get them to use different talents that they might not expect to use. I don't know that I would have done artwork in my language classroom growing up, but I try to find ways that I can incorporate that for these students. And so the overall atmosphere is that we recognize students are gifted in certain ways and we want to encourage that, but we also encourage the other side of that as well, that maybe there are ways they haven't found they're good, or maybe there are things that they can still develop, and we provide opportunity for both.
Great.
Yeah.
Jason?
Academically, one way I like to bring this adventurousness into my class is just by encouraging students to push themselves to select, for instance, when they select a book report book, to select something that's maybe above grade level, and it's actually pretty challenging. Like my 8th graders right now are reading legitimate, like 500, 600 page books about presidents, like John Meacham's biography of Andrew Jackson, which one of my 8th graders just finished, American Lion. It's, I push them to read difficult materials in class. I require them to read difficult materials. But I also set reasonable expectations. You're not going to understand everything that you read. And so we work on strategies of how to deal with that. And that's just how life is. You're not always fully prepared for everything you encounter in life. And so you have to learn how to manage that. And so that's part of the process of being adventurous in my classroom.
Great. Thank you. I think, as students are adventurous and getting involved in things, back to our friendships theme, certainly we've seen that over the years. It's often not, necessarily who they're sitting next to in class or, that group they're with, that their friends often are built around kind of other shared experiences, that are times outside of the classroom. So, if someone asked me, for their middle school student, what would be one of the best ways for them to build some friendships? It would be get them involved in, an athletic team or on the play or, something else that's, outside of the classroom. That's a shared experience that they could be involved with. And then they're going to have stories to tell together. If they won the game or lost the game, they're going to face that together. And those are the kinds of things that we've seen so many times, build friendships that we might not have thought existed. I mean, that's true at all schools, not just WCA, but what we're more intentional about is making sure all those opportunities exist, even for students that maybe haven't played soccer since they were 5 years old. They can still go out for the soccer team and be encouraged to do that and be, not worrying about, failing. And again, that kind of goes back to the slide before on the size of the school, where there are opportunities, or as I mentioned, the play, students can go out for the play, even though if that's not something they've done before. So we think making sure that those kinds of opportunities exist are also, important to being able to build friendships. I think just we're a little bit past time. I'm past the time I told Jason and Stephanie we'd cut them loose here. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I think to summarize, we would say it's who, the foundation for building those friendships, is, first how a student are thinking about themselves. And from that, having that identity in Christ and finding identity through opportunities, through encouragements they get in the surrounding community, that provides that kind of springboard for them, to develop the right kinds of friendships, not just tagging along with the group because that kind of is the popular one, but really, building friendships out of a stable and a base of who they are. So that's one of the reasons, we've kind of taken that direction in this webinar. We think that's the root of where those kinds of friendships are going to be. And as we're thinking about the students here, and working with them, that's the first thing that we think about. We so appreciate your spending time with us, and we thank you for investing this time at WCA. Certainly, if you have any questions about our middle school, the way that we handle things and encourage friendships, we'd love to hear from you out there as well. We have other resources. I mentioned our website. We haven't talked a lot about academics. Jason did that some, but we are a school too, besides just a social platform for building friendships, although that's hugely important. But we have a webinar that talks about our academic program, and particularly how we're preparing students for college and how even that starts in middle school. So Jason alluded to some of the academics in his classroom. Well, again, thank you so much, and we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Lord bless you.